there's that misconception that Islam doesn't have that level of forgiveness that Christianity does. And again, that's not true. There are quite a few misconceptions like this, and that's understandable because we're a different civilization and stuff like that. But you'll get the answers again and again in the Quran. Because the thing about the Quran is, it's there to be accessible for everybody. It's not a scripture which is, you need a PhD, you need someone sitting with you.
I thought it was only written in Arabic because I have friends who are from other Muslim countries, for example Bangladeshi, and they have learned Arabic to read the Quran. Or is that just so they could read it in the original?
Yeah, that's the original, that's the translation. So translations will always be a shadow of the message, right? But that makes no difference in terms of you getting the gist of the message. That's going to be the main thing. But I'd like to, what's it called? Do you have an email address?
Yeah, I do.
I can email you some other resources, and we can be in contact.
I can't guarantee a lot. I'm quite a busy person. I will definitely try and read this. I'm very interested in Islam.
Definitely.
But I can't guarantee a lot of education.
No. That's
absolutely.
No, that's absolutely fine. There's actually an email address. If you have questions, you will find an email address on the inside page as well. It's, I think, somewhere in here.
Whose email address is this?
It will go to the organization I work for.
Okay.
So, I mean, if you got any questions on Islam...
Did your organization translate this?
We didn't translate this, but somebody that worked for us, he previously translated it. This is one of the latest translations. It's quite easy to read and stuff.
But it's a direct translation. There's no interpretation put into it.
No, there's no interpretation, but it's like
everyone's a little bit.
No, not quite. It's kind of like this. Say in English, you have camel, the word camel. In Arabic, you'll have, I think, over 200 words for camel or something, right? So, it's not exact, something like this. But the message is the same. It's a very neutral translation.
So does that mean that you're saying it's much more parabolic? It's about stories rather than individual segments and lines. If the individual words as such don't matter quite as much, does that mean it's more of the story? The Quran's got more of a message rather than having individual commandments.
Oh yeah. I mean, the Quran has. You're exactly right. Parables, stories, history, a lot of focus on theology, praise of God. So it's not like Islam is not like when you open up the Quran, it's not about do and don't. I mean, you do have a small part, segments of that, what's allowed and what's not allowed. But the Quran is there to change your heart. That's the main thing. The Quran mentions the heart a lot. And the thing about submitting to God is that it will give you peace of heart.
That's the thing about science, though, I mean, is that a literal heart or is that kind of much more metaphorical? Because we know that emotions don't actually come from the heart; they do come in the brain. It's just the heart's quite, it does feel like it comes from the heart.
Yeah.
So that's a more metaphorical way of putting it. It's not.
They have discovered these neurons in the heart.
That's just to make the heart beat without...
There is that, but there is also the concept of the thinking heart. For me, that's kind of irrelevant because it could be that, like you said, it's a metaphor. It could be that, no, the heart physically thinks. I don't know the answer. But the message is the same, whether we say reflect upon this or not.
It's only a very small thing.
Yeah. But the thing about the Quran is that it is something which it gets people to really change their perspective on life. I would recommend you start with chapter 18. That's about young people. Yeah, it's actually a story that we also get before Islam. Because you remember, Islam is a continuation of the prophets of the old. Yes.
And what about? So I spoke. What about reading the Quran in historical context? So, for example, I was speaking to a friend of mine, a friend I made recently at Imperial. He's Islamic, and he said he believed in the death penalty
For you to have free will, you need the option to do
I can't quite remember our conversation, but
he would let you do it.
I was asking him.
That's the libertarian.
And it's the same. To me, it's the same with homosexuality. Do you have to read the Quran to an extent in historical contexts? Because I'm not saying it's completely different, but I'm saying small things like, so Muhammad, he was in Medina. So in Medina he was running a state, and he was born in Mecca, and he ran the state in Medina. He's running a tight ship. He needs to make sure that people are kind of in line. So I've heard the story of the Jewish man. And then that led to all Jews being expelled. I mean, in the historical context back then, that's very much justified. But nowadays, with such extreme acts like that, still be justified. Like homosexuality, I've been told, is because you were made, and then it's your responsibility, to make others. And if you're homosexual, you cannot do that. But would you not say, I mean, based upon what I've just said, unless that's wrong or I've remembered it wrong, would you not say that in these modern times, where you've got a population approaching 8 billion people on the planet, we don't need everyone to have children? In somewhere like Medina, you definitely did. You needed to keep your population up. But in a world like this, is that still necessary for you to, you have to have children, or you can't be homosexual because of that?
There's a few things you said there, like about you have a duty to have take care of other human beings, and reading the Quran historically. The thing is, we as Muslims believe that this is revelation from God.
There are things you do.
So the lessons and the objectives are timeless. So from that perspective, reading it historically wouldn't make sense. But there is one sense in which reading it historically in some areas, like politics, is important. So for example, that story you mentioned about the Jewish people, back then everything was based on tribes and allegiances and contracts. So there was a contract made, there was a breach, and then it was I don't remember which incident you're referring to, because there's quite a few, but this was pretty much the norm of international relations. So anybody that studies, say, political science today, we have states and we have nation states today, and then we have the United Nations, we have international organizations, human rights organizations and whatnot. So you have a functioning international system. In the past, we had what Hobbes would refer to as a state of anarchy. You would have states, no demarcated borders, and you would have whoever has the power, they can invade the foreign state and do these types of things. So the political aspect, we have to look at it from that perspective.
Muhammad expanded the religion, and his successors expanded the religion through conquest, and obviously that wouldn't be appropriate nowadays. And there are other means in which you can spread the message.
And there's also another context to keep in mind. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, do not fight the Ethiopians unless they fight you first. Do not fight the Turks unless they fight you first. So what's interesting is Ethiopians were not hostile. The Romans and the Persians were hostile. So there's a context. It wasn't just like all-out war against everybody. And like you said about it wouldn't be acceptable today. So today we have two main sort of schools in international relations. We have liberalism and we have realism, right? But even realists today, they would hold on to this idea that if there is threat to your state, then they can have offensive realism and invade and do these things, or defensive realism and defend themselves. So sometimes there's unfair criticism towards the political aspects of Islam in the beginning, because people are taking, but they never had this. Do you understand what I mean? Yeah.
But you are saying that obviously the messages don't change in historical context. Don't kill doesn't matter if it's now or 1,000 years ago. But some things in terms of historical events, you say the historical context very much.
Yeah. So for example, if you have a Muslim country, you have a non-Muslim states like you have today, you don't do the sort of expansion that we're speaking about, because you have international treaties, you have borders, you have alliances, you have all of these types of things. In the past, those things didn't exist. However, you mentioned homosexuality. So homosexuality, you mentioned about population and stuff, like today we have lots of population and back then we didn't. Thing is, that's not the reason why it's forbidden. It's forbidden because God said it's forbidden. So even if someone technically is a homosexual and they also have 10 children because they're bisexual, that in a way solves the problem you're speaking about, but Islam will still forbid it. Likewise, pig in Islam is not allowed. Yeah, but why is it not allowed? God said so. You see, so there's certain things. Yeah, trusting God. So there's certain things. Like I said, I can show you, Ray, why Islam is true, but why Islam has X, Y, Z, we don't know. We simply have to say God.
The thing is, for me, reading the Quran, I still won't read it necessarily believing that there is a God who can perform such miracles.
Right.
That part is kind of beyond my belief. But regardless of that, I think that there's a lot that I can learn from the Quran. In my opinion, the Quran and other books were made by, millennia of thought, and you hear me out. It's not directly, but in my opinion, the Quran is made. It's a truth in how people can work and how people
like
can
a
work.
pragmatic thing.
Personally, exactly. I think, in my belief, it's less about true, submission to a real God, but more pragmatic. This is the best way to live.
I see that, and I think most people think that about religion. I would obviously not believe that. At the same time, in Islam, when it comes to evidence and proof, Islam doesn't shy from it. So, as Muslims, for example, I wouldn't say to somebody, believe and that's it. I would actually try to reason and try to give rational arguments. So, one of the things about the Quran is the Quran helped science flourish. Why? Because the Quran itself as a book is a book of critical reasoning. It gets you to think. It gets you to reflect. The Quran teaches you not to accept the norms of your society, right? To actually think about what you're doing.
And the religious tolerance of the early Islamic states as well. Baghdad being that centre of learning.
Yeah.
What about, last question before I'm going to go there. What about the state of, the Arab world right now? And there are some, very suppressing laws which, very much suppress homosexuals, very much suppress women, and many other groups, Would you say that they are in direct affront to the Quran?
Well, the thing is, I don't want to talk about those states because those are post-colonial states.
Oh yeah.
Which are, what I would say is that, say for example,
it's definitely not without its historical context.
Let's put it this way. Say there is a state that we can look back at in history. You, Ray, could look at the laws of that state which are being applied according to the Quran, not somebody else. And they are, according to you, oppressive. Because you will say, for example, that hijab is a choice.
Not so much hijab, more kind of, homosexuality being illegal. Until recently, women not being able to drive.
So the woman not driving, that's not to do with Islam. That's just whatever it is. But for example, hijab being enforced, homosexuality not being allowed. What else?
I don't know. There's
so for example, in Islam, objectification of women is criminalized. So you can't have a woman who says, I want to make income on, selling pictures of myself or revealing clothes. Islam will say, no, you're not allowed to do that. Now, someone who's brought up in an egalitarian society, they'll say that's oppressive. Or about homosexuals, say two homosexuals holding hands in public or
would it not be their right to get it wrong, and then for God to judge them, at the end, rather than the state to come in and say so?
Yes. So that's
Can you not give people the opportunity to get things wrong for the sake of freedom and then trusting God? I mean, obviously, I don't.
No, I understand what you're saying.
Pornography, it's disgusting.
No.
It shouldn't really be allowed.
It should be criminalised.
There are things that the state can do, but I think to an extent you should trust in God and not the state, and allow people to do things wrong. As long as they're not, very badly wrong.
See, that idea is very popular, and
obviously it's difficult to draw that line.
Yeah.
But it's obviously not all the way over at one end of the spectrum.
So again, like I said previously, I can't explain to you the whyness of it, but what we're taught in Islam is God teaches us to judge by the apparent and to apply the laws that He has legislated. So for example, if somebody is in a business and they want to open up a chicken farm, they want to open up a vegetable store, they want to do whatever, you do what you want with your life. Okay, you want to marry whoever you want to marry, you marry whoever you want to marry. So Islam doesn't get involved in those things. But things to do with the public interest, whether it comes to the moral side of things or the political side of things, Islam has certain restrictions which restrict the freedoms which are natural in a liberal state. Now, I'm not going to shy away that there is a direct contradiction between what we are used to growing up in a liberal state and what Islam teaches. And people, even Muslims who are brought up in these liberal states, they may even feel uncomfortable at those things. But the fact is, those are legislated, we believe, by God.
Some of those things.
So for example, you may get some liberal-minded Muslims who are like, hijab's a choice. And Islam says, no, in a Muslim empire, hijab is not a choice, it's state enforced. Likewise, for example, a woman is supposed to wear modest clothing, and say a woman says, no, for example, according to what you said, let people learn by their mistakes, Islam doesn't allow that freedom.
What about the other way around though? Should men be modest as well? Should men wear something which is, a bit more covering?
So men are not allowed to, for example, flaunt, right? Men are not supposed to attract the other gender by, because as you know in Islam it's all about marriage. You can't have boyfriend, girlfriend and stuff. So men have those restrictions as well, but they don't have it to the extent that the women do. So the woman has to wear a hijab, a man does not.
Why is that?
That's just God's law. So the other thing is, look,
that's the point for me where I start to think, I want to let my girlfriend, do what she wants. I think,
So and that's the thing where Islam contradicts human desires. So one of the things in Islam is that
which is about how much trust you have in God then, rather than what you think is right personally.
Yeah. So for example, as a man, you could make yourself look more attractive if you were clean shaven or if you had a goatee or whatever, right? But if you grow a beard, right, it makes you less attractive as a man. It can do, right? Also, as a man, you want to, and I'm going by societal standards because sometimes beards are really fashionable, sometimes they're not. As a man, you want to go into business, right? You can't in Islam take out a loan on interest. Interest is forbidden. So for example, I'm paying rent. In Islam forbids me from getting a house on interest, getting a house on mortgage, which puts me in financial more difficulty than I would otherwise.
But how would you get a student loan to go to university? Surely that's more harmful than good.
No, but student loans are different.
Can you? Well, they didn't have student loans when the Quran was written, though. Like, can you weigh up certain laws when you're trying to apply the laws of God in your own life? Can you weigh up one law against another law and say, I think, which contradict each other in a certain situation? I mean, so
that's where we would go to scholars. Like an average Muslim doesn't do that.
Okay.
But you see the Islamic model, remember I said to you the vase and the two faces looking at each other? It's a paradigm shift. So the Islamic economic model is based upon spending, not saving. So in a economy in which you have interest, if you take your money and you stake it, you get free money in your way. You get interest. Islam teaches you to spend money to make money, and also there's state-enforced charity. So anybody who zakat, yeah. You know a lot of stuff. So a lot of people will say that goes against my freedom, it goes against this, it goes against that. But the thing is, there's many things in Islam which they're not in conflict with what we want. But there's some things in Islam which are like, for example, you're a young man, you're 18 and stuff. Now, when you're a young man, you see an attractive woman walking past, you naturally look. That's what young men do. Or, you know, like, for example, young people, they have boyfriends, they have girlfriends, they have these things, or they go partying, they go drinking. You have indulgences like, you know, alcohol and weed and, you know, these types of things. But these fun things, Islam says you're not allowed to have them. Again, and it's very difficult sometimes. And if it wasn't, like, for example, when I was growing up, if it wasn't for my love of God, these things would overwhelm me. But that's the thing, Islam teaches you to not be a slave to your own desires, not be a slave to society, but be a slave to God.
To love God more than you love yourself.
Yes. And a lot of people find that very hard.
Yeah, no, but I think that kind of gets to the core of a lot of where, you know, your and me and Augustine's like slight disagreements were. You know, ours were more kind of personal centered, and yours were more God centered. Anyway, it's been a pleasure to talk to you.
It was great.
Have a nice day.
We're here every Sunday, so join anytime you can.
Great. Thank you.
Ray and your friends Augustus. Good. See you later. Assalamu alaikum, brother. How you doing?
My name's Faisal. I watch a lot of your videos online. I'm not here to debate or anything like that. I'm
Okay.
here to...
Do you know, we just want to go pray. You want to come with us?
Yeah, we're going to.
We will walk. Let me just see.